At my annual family Christmas gathering, my daughter-in-law whispered about sending me to a nursing home, not realizing I understood her Portuguese. Then she and her sister-in-law discussed my house's value and how my son was a mom only child. I just smiled, hiding the silent scream inside. They have no idea what's coming. This is just the beginning of my story. Please like, share, and let me know where you're listening from. The scent of pine and cinnamon usually filled my home with comfort and joy during our annual Christmas gathering, a tradition I had upheld for over 4 decades. This year, however, a subtle chill seemed to permeate the air, a premonition I couldn't quite place until later. My hands gnarled by the relentless clutch of arthritis, a constant companion that reminded me of my 70-plus years, still moved with practiced grace as I arranged the last of the gingerbread cookies on a silver platter. Every year, I insisted on doing most of the preparations myself, a small act of defiance against the limitations of my aging body. My family, I told myself, deserved nothing less than the perfect, warm embrace of Christmas. My son, Michael, was bustling around, trying to be helpful in his usual clumsy way, while his wife, Victoria, chatted animatedly with her sister-in-law, Isabel, near the fireplace. The soft murmur of their voices, occasionally punctuated by laughter, usually brought a smile to my face. But tonight, as I stepped into the archway between the kitchen and the living room, a particular phrase floated across the air, sharp and distinct, cutting through the festive carols playing softly. Victoria's voice, usually so sweet and deferential in my presence, dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Vamos mandareya promisu," she said, her eyes flicking towards me for a fleeting second before quickly returning to Isabel. A cold wave washed over me. My Portuguese, rusty from years of disuse, was still perfectly functional, a relic from my youth spent abroad. The phrase snapped into place in my mind with a clarity that stung like a slap. "We need to send that old hag to a nursing home." The words echoed, a cruel, blunt instrument striking at the very core of my being. My hands, still holding the delicate porcelain plate, trembled imperceptibly. The gingerbread cookies suddenly felt heavy, like stones in my palms. Isabel, equally oblivious to my linguistic capabilities, leaned in, her voice barely audible. "What about the house, though? It's a lovely place. Big, too." Victoria's eyes gleamed with a calculating glint. "It's worth at least $700,000 now. Michael's an only child, you know. It'll all be his eventually." Her tone was matter-of-fact, a cold assessment of my worth, reduced to real estate and inheritance. They spoke of me as if I were a problem to be solved, an obstacle to their financial gain. Not a mother, a grandmother, a person who had poured her entire life into nurturing this family. The festive cheer around me dissolved into a cacophony of betrayal. My breath hitched in my throat, a sharp, searing pain far worse than any arthritis flare-up. It wasn't about my well-being, my comfort, or even my happiness. It was about the house, my sanctuary, the place I had called home for 50 years. The walls imbued with memories of laughter, tears, birthdays, and Christmases past. It was merely a prize to be claimed, a $700,000 asset standing between them and their greed. I swallowed the bitter pill of their words, a lump of ice forming in my chest. My smile, which moments ago had been genuine, now felt like a fragile mask. My face, I hoped, remained composed, betraying none of the seismic shift occurring within me. I nodded vaguely at Michael, who was now untangling a string of fairy lights, his back to the conspirators. The silence I maintained was not of ignorance, but of a shock so profound it rendered me momentarily speechless, freezing every muscle, every thought, every emotion, into a rigid, deceptive calm. Later, during the Secret Santa exchange, a tradition I always cherished for its innocent joy, I found myself facing Victoria. I held a small, velvet-covered box in my trembling hands. Inside, nestled on a bed of satin, was a vintage emerald brooch, a family heirloom passed down through 3 generations of women in my family. It was a piece I adored, a small splash of vibrant green against my usually muted clothes, a constant reminder of my own mother and grandmother. As her name was called, Victoria approached, her movements light and confident. Her smile was wide, but a flicker of something undefinable danced in her eyes as she took the gift from me. The moment her fingers brushed against mine, I felt a jolt, as if the air around us crackled with unspoken tension. She opened the box, her eyes widening at the sight of the gleaming emeralds. A gasp escaped her lips, a mix of genuine surprise and something else entirely. Her usually poised demeanor faltered. Her hands, still clutching the small box, began to tremble. Her expression contorted, a strange cocktail of shock, perhaps a sliver of guilt and a dawning realization. Then, in a clumsy, almost comical motion, she lost her footing. Her heels, perhaps too high for the soft rug, twisted beneath her. She tumbled, a startled cry escaping her, falling to the floor with a soft thud, still clutching the velvet box as if it were a lifeline. Michael rushed to her side, his concern immediate and genuine. "Victoria, are you all right?" he asked, helping her to sit up. My gaze, however, was fixed on Victoria. Even as Michael fussed over her, checking for any injury, I saw it in her eyes, a rapid succession of emotions. There was indeed a flash of remorse, a flicker of shame, quickly replaced by a cold, calculating assessment. Had I known, was this some subtle form of retaliation? She was trying to piece together my intentions, her mind racing. I stepped forward, my voice surprisingly steady, a warm, seemingly oblivious tone masking the turmoil raging within. "Oh dear, are you all right, Victoria? You must be careful with such precious things." I extended a hand to help her, my touch light, almost dismissive. "Merry Christmas, dear." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and strained conversations. The festive music felt hollow, the laughter brittle. When the last car had pulled out of the driveway and the echo of their goodbyes faded, I stood alone in the quiet living room, the lingering scent of pine and cinnamon now suffocating. The house felt empty, yet heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. I walked to the fireplace, my fingers tracing the cold marble mantelpiece, my mind replaying Victoria's whispered words, Isabel's probing questions. The reality, stark and brutal, settled upon me. It was not about my care, my comfort, my health. It was about money, about my death, about what they stood to inherit. My heart ached with a pain more profound than any physical ailment. The betrayal was a festering wound, deep and unforgiving. But as the initial shock subsided, a different kind of sensation began to stir within me. It wasn't resignation, nor was it despair. It was a silent, steely resolve, hardening my spirit like tempered steel. They saw me as an old woman, frail and unaware, a burden, a means to an end. They had no idea. They had absolutely no idea what I was planning for their future, what intricate threads I would begin to weave, starting now in the quiet, empty aftermath of this devastating Christmas. The week following Christmas felt like a strange, unsettling dream. The usual post-holiday lull was replaced by a simmering tension, a careful dance of forced normalcy orchestrated by Michael and Victoria. I watched them, my senses heightened, every word, every gesture, analyzed through the lens of betrayal that had shattered my festive spirit. They moved around me with a feigned solicitude that grated on my nerves. Victoria, in particular, adopted a new habit of dramatic sighs whenever I moved a little slower, or when my arthritic hands fumbled slightly with a teacup. "Oh, Mother Eleanor," she'd lament, her voice dripping with an exaggerated concern that felt more like pity. "Your arthritis is really acting up, isn't it? Perhaps you shouldn't push yourself so much." Michael, my own son, played his part with less subtlety. If I paused for a moment searching for a word, or momentarily forgot where I'd placed my reading glasses, his eyes would dart toward Victoria, a silent communication passing between them, filled with what they clearly believed was shared concern. These glances were meant to be discreet, but to my now hyper-vigilant gaze, they were as loud as shouting. They were building a case, meticulously gathering what they thought were pieces of evidence for my supposed decline. Each forgetting was logged, each stumble mentally noted. They were constructing a narrative of my incompetence, a foundation for their grand scheme. New Year's Day arrived, crisp and cold, mirroring the frost that had settled in my heart. The air still held the faint scent of stale pine from the discarded Christmas tree, a bitter reminder of the recent revelation. I had spent the morning baking my famous cinnamon rolls, their sweet aroma a stark contrast to the bitter truth brewing inside me. I made an unannounced visit to Michael and Victoria's house, a small act of rebellion against Victoria's unspoken rule that all visits should be planned, scheduled, and preferably short. The warm pan of rolls, carefully wrapped in a festive tea towel, felt like a Trojan horse in my hands. I rang the doorbell, a faint jingle in the quiet afternoon. After a moment, I heard hurried movements inside, a muffled thump, and then Michael opened the door, his face a mask of startled surprise. "Mother Eleanor! What a surprise! Come in, come in!" His voice was too loud, too jovial, betraying his unease. Victoria emerged from the dining room, her usually perfectly coiffed hair slightly disheveled, her cheeks flushed. Her eyes, wide with panic, darted from me to the dining table behind her. "Mother Eleanor, how lovely to see you. We weren't expecting you." She tried to block my view of the room, her body language radiating frantic urgency. It was a clumsy attempt to conceal something, and it only confirmed my suspicions. "I just wanted to drop off some fresh cinnamon rolls," I said, my voice sweet and innocent. My eyes, however, betraying nothing of the steel behind them. "Thought you might enjoy them with your coffee." I walked past Michael, straight toward the dining room, Victoria's hissed warning to Michael, "The table," doing little to stop me. The sight that greeted me was everything I had anticipated, and yet it still delivered a sharp, visceral punch. Spread across the polished mahogany surface were stacks of brochures, legal documents, and what looked like financial spreadsheets. My gaze swept across the papers, quickly taking in the damning evidence. "Golden Sunset Assisted Living" proclaimed a glossy brochure, its cheerful fonts and idyllic pictures mocking the cruel reality. Another pile included documents with heavy legal language: capacity and guardianship, power of attorney, asset liquidation. My name, scrawled in various places, was an unmistakable target. My eyes then drifted to the refrigerator, adorned with my grandson Daniel's cheerful crayon drawings. Among them, a bright, colorful picture stood out. It was a crude but recognizable drawing of my own house, complete with its characteristic bay window and the sprawling oak tree in the front yard. Scrawled above it in childish block letters were the words, "Our new home." A profound silence descended, thick and suffocating. The scent of cinnamon rolls now felt like ash in my mouth. My initial shock hardened into a cold, unwavering resolve. I turned slowly, my gaze fixed on Michael, who stood frozen in the doorway, his face pale with a dawning horror. Victoria behind him wrung her hands, her earlier frantic energy now replaced by a terrified stillness. "When were you planning to tell me about moving into my house, Michael?" My voice was calm, almost dangerously so, lacking any trace of the anger that simmered beneath my carefully constructed facade. Michael stammered, his eyes darting between me and the incriminating table. "Mother Eleanor, it's not what it looks like. We were just exploring options for your well-being." Victoria quickly interjected, her voice regaining a shaky semblance of control. "Yes, Mother Eleanor, we've just been so worried about you lately. You've been forgetting things. And that stove incident—" "The stove incident," I interrupted, my voice still level, but with an edge that cut through her nervous chatter. "Are you referring to the faulty burner that I had repaired myself a week later? The one you insisted was proof I was getting confused because I couldn't light it?" Michael shifted uncomfortably. "And you fell, Mother. Twice. Just last month. We worry." I tripped on a loose rug thread near the stairs, which I then secured, I countered. My memory sharp and clear. "And the second time I slipped on the wet floor after Daniel spilled his juice, which you yourself cleaned up, Michael, and then promptly forgot to mention in your dramatic retelling." My words were delivered with a quiet authority that stunned them into silence. Their carefully constructed narrative was crumbling before their eyes. The air hung heavy with their guilt and my quiet fury. It was no longer a question of my well-being. It never truly had been. It was about the house, the money, the assets. Their greed was laid bare, ugly and undeniable. "I'm done waiting," I declared, my voice resonating with a newfound strength that surprised even myself. The words were not a plea or a complaint. They were a statement of intent, a line drawn in the sand. I looked at the brochures, at Daniel's drawing, at the faces of my son and his wife, stripped bare of their pretense. The illusion of family, of love, of care had utterly shattered. I turned and walked out, leaving the cinnamon rolls on their kitchen counter, a sweet, ignored offering. The silence of the car felt liberating. As I drove home, the winter sun glinting off the icy roads, a cold, clear thought solidified in my mind. They had declared war, and they had gravely underestimated their opponent. I would prepare. The drive home from Michael and Victoria's house was silent, but my mind buzzed with a newfound clarity, a steel resolve replacing the initial shock and pain. The first thing I did upon entering my quiet house was to reach for the telephone. There was only one person I could trust with this devastating news. One person whose wisdom and counsel I knew would be invaluable. My oldest friend Beatrice, a sharp-witted woman who had retired from her long and distinguished career as an attorney just last year. Beatrice answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. "Eleanor, my dear, to what do I owe this unexpected pleasure?" My voice, however, cracked as I recounted the afternoon's events, the golden sunset brochure, Daniel's drawing, the flimsy excuses, and their blatant lies. There was a pause on the other end, a deep, heavy silence that spoke volumes. Then, Beatrice's voice came through, no longer warm, but laced with a fierce, controlled outrage. "The audacity! Eleanor, this is despicable. We need to act, and we need to act now. This isn't just about disrespect. This is about financial exploitation and elder abuse." She quickly shifted into her professional mode, her instructions clear and precise. "First, you must document everything. Every conversation, every slip of memory, every manipulative comment. Get yourself a small, discreet voice recorder. Georgia is a one-party consent state, meaning you can record conversations as long as you are a participant, without their knowledge. This will be crucial evidence." I hung up, feeling a surge of determination. Beatrice's words had ignited a spark, transforming my simmering anger into a meticulously planned strategy. The war had begun, and I needed to be armed with irrefutable evidence. My first step was a comprehensive medical evaluation. The following morning, I called Dr. Hayes, my trusted physician of 20 years, and scheduled an appointment for a full cognitive assessment. I needed official documentation of my mental acuity, something beyond reproach. A few days later, after a series of tests and a thorough examination, Dr. Hayes looked at me, a gentle smile on his face. "Eleanor, your mind is as sharp as a tack. Your memory, your reasoning, your cognitive functions are all excellent for a woman of your age. There's absolutely no indication of any decline whatsoever." The doctor's words were a balm to my soul, a professional confirmation that their narrative of my forgetfulness was nothing but a cruel fabrication. With Dr. R. Hayes' clean bill of mental health in hand, I moved on to securing my financial independence. I discreetly visited my bank. "I'd like to close my joint account with my son, Michael," I informed the teller, my voice calm. The process was swift and surprisingly liberating. I then opened a new private account at a different bank, transferring the bulk of my assets, including the proceeds from a small investment portfolio, into this new secure haven. They would find no easy pickings there. Next, I followed Beatrice's advice and secured a small voice recorder, a tiny device that fit easily into the pocket of my cardigan. It was a constant companion, silently documenting every interaction with Michael and Victoria, every loaded sigh, every subtle jab. I also reached out to an elder law attorney, a specialist Beatrice highly recommended, and began the process of solidifying my legal protections, including updating my will and power of attorney documents. My outward demeanor, however, remained unchanged, perhaps even softened. I adopted a feigned air of increasing frailty, a slight tremor in my hands that wasn't always due to arthritis, a momentary pause as if searching for a word. I observed Victoria, and her manipulations became more frequent, more brazen. I noticed her subtly rearranging my medication bottles, placing them in different spots, then feigning concern when I asked where they were. "Oh, Mother Eleanor, you moved them yourself yesterday. Are you sure you're taking your pills on time?" she would ask, her voice oozing faux worry. Discussions about my forgetfulness became a recurring theme during their visits. "Remember that time you left the stove on, Mother Eleanor?" Michael would say, referencing the faulty burner incident. "It's just so worrying." And Victoria, ever the subtle instigator, would casually drop mentions of wonderful assisted living communities she'd heard about, painting idyllic pictures of round-the-clock care and social activities, all designed to make me more comfortable. I played along, nodding vaguely, offering weak smiles, allowing them to believe their plan was progressing smoothly. I heard Victoria whisper to Michael during one of their visits, "It's getting worse, isn't it? She can barely remember what she had for lunch." The words, meant to be unheard, were perfectly captured by the tiny recorder in my pocket. Let them think what they wanted. Let them dig their own grave. In parallel with my strategic defense, I began to rebuild my own life. I joined a book club, delighting in the lively discussions and the camaraderie. I signed up for water aerobics at the local community center, finding both physical relief for my joints and renewed energy in the gentle exercise. I reconnected with old friends I had, perhaps unconsciously, neglected over the years, inviting them for tea, sharing stories, and rediscovering the joy of genuine companionship. This wasn't just about strategy, it was about reclaiming my own existence. The next crucial step was to gauge the loyalty of my wider family. My sister-in-law, Sarah, Michael's aunt, was someone I had always considered honest and straightforward. During a casual phone call, I subtly broached the subject of my living situation, feigning a moment of vulnerability. "You know, Sarah," I sighed, "Michael and Victoria have been talking a lot about me moving. They seem to think I can't manage on my own anymore." Sarah's response was immediate and filled with a mixture of shock and anger. "Eleanor, you won't believe the things I've heard. Victoria has been telling everyone that you're practically senile and that they're going to put your house on the market as soon as you're settled. She even mentioned selling all your furniture. She was practically planning the new decor for your living room." The confirmation, though painful, was also empowering. Sarah's outrage was genuine, and she instantly became an unwitting yet invaluable ally. The extent of Victoria and Michael's greed was laid bare, confirming their callous disregard for my feelings, my home, my belongings. They weren't just planning to move me out, they were planning to erase my presence entirely. Later that week, a text message popped up on my phone from Michael. "Hey, Mom, thinking of coming over Saturday to fix that loose railing on the front porch. Let me know if that works." I smiled, a slow, knowing smile that reached only my eyes. My fingers, still arthritic but now precise, typed out my reply. "That would be lovely, dear. I'll make your favorite coffee cake." The trap was set, and they were walking right into it, oblivious to the meticulous preparations unfolding around them. February draped a thin gray veil over the city, but inside my home, a different kind of chill had settled. Michael and Victoria's solicitousness intensified with the deepening winter. Michael, armed with his toolbox, made frequent appearances, meticulously fixing every creaking hinge and loose floorboard. His presence was less about genuine helpfulness and more about staking a claim, marking his territory. He'd spend hours pottering around, ostensibly ensuring my house was safe, but his eyes would constantly roam, assessing, calculating. Victoria, meanwhile, became the queen of casseroles, delivering steaming dishes to my door with an air of saintly sacrifice. Each casserole felt less like a gift and more like an offering to a rapidly declining deity whose assets were soon to be divvied up. During these visits, the conversations inevitably drifted toward my future. Michael, ever the careful one, would gently prod. "Mother, we just want to make sure you're comfortable. We've been looking into some wonderful options, like Golden Sunset Assisted Living. It has such lovely gardens." He'd pause, letting the words hang in the air, then add, "And about your belongings, dear. We should really start thinking about what you'd like to keep, what might be best to sell, or perhaps distribute among the family." The casual mention of distributing my possessions felt like vultures circling, already anticipating the carcass. His probing grew more direct. "And your important papers, Mother, your will, bank statements, things like that. Do you keep them all in one place? It's just so easy to misplace things at our age." My heart would pound, but I maintained my facade of vague dismissiveness. Oh, those old things? Somewhere, dear, somewhere. I'll get to them eventually. I kept my voice light, batting away his questions as if they were inconsequential, all while my hidden recorder diligently captured every word. The escalating pressure prompted another urgent call to Beatrice. After listening to my latest recordings and reports, her voice crackled with a triumphant energy. Excellent, Eleanor. They're taking the bait. Now it's time to set a bigger hook. We need to accelerate their plans by dangling a much juicier carrot. Beatrice, with her brilliant legal mind, devised the perfect lure: fictional, hidden wealth. We'll create a phantom inheritance, she explained, something that I couldn't possibly know about, something that would make them truly salivate. The story we crafted involved a long-lost Aunt Clara in Florida, whose recent, quiet passing left me with a substantial property overlooking the Gulf. This, coupled with some secret, lucrative investments she'd managed for me over the years, and a forgotten, hefty life insurance policy, would be the new, irresistible prize. My house transformed into a stage for this elaborate deception. I accidentally left fake bank statements on my coffee table, showing suspiciously large, recent transfers from a Clara Thompson estate, glossy brochures for luxurious Florida retirement communities, far grander than Golden Sunset, appeared casually among my magazines. I even planted a faded photograph of Aunt Clara, a distant cousin I vaguely remembered, in a prominent spot on my mantelpiece. My feigned forgetfulness escalated dramatically. I'd call Michael in a manufactured panic, claiming I couldn't find my car, only to discover it parked right in my driveway moments later. "Oh dear, I must be losing my mind," I'd exclaim, hearing Victoria's barely stifled sigh of satisfaction on the other end of the line. Each fabricated lapse reinforced their narrative, deepening their conviction that my cognitive decline was rapid and irreversible. The crescendo arrived one crisp afternoon. I took a deep breath, picked up the phone, and dialed Michael's number. My voice when I spoke was deliberately fragile, tinged with what I hoped sounded like genuine resignation. "Michael, dear," I began, a tremor in my voice. "I've been thinking. Maybe you're right. Maybe this house, it's just too much for me now." I let the words hang in the air, a perfectly crafted sentence designed to trigger their avarice. "All these stairs and the garden, it's just becoming overwhelming." The response was instantaneous. "Mother, oh mother, don't worry, we'll be right over. Don't you lift a finger." Michael's voice was a little too eager, Victoria's hurried exclamation of, "We're on our way," barely audible in the background. Their thinly veiled triumph was almost palpable through the phone line. They arrived within 15 minutes, breathless, their eyes gleaming with a barely concealed excitement that betrayed their concern. I greeted them with a tired smile, gesturing toward the dining table where I had carefully placed a slightly worn, leather-bound folder. "I was just going through some old papers," I said, my voice trailing off as if overwhelmed. "It's all so confusing. I thought, maybe you could help me make sense of it all, for my future care, you know." Michael, his eyes fixated on the folder, practically lunged for it. He settled into a chair, Victoria hovering over his shoulder, their heads bent in unison as he began to examine the contents. The first few papers were genuine, innocuous household bills and old tax returns, designed to establish authenticity. Then he reached the good stuff. I watched their faces with a detached fascination. Their expressions shifted from initial confusion as they encountered unfamiliar documents to a slow dawning of shock, and then, inevitably, to poorly disguised, ravenous greed. The fake deed for the Florida property, the meticulously crafted bank statements detailing the Aunt Clara inheritance and secret investments, the substantial life insurance policy, it all unfolded before their eyes. Victoria gasped, a small, unladylike sound, her hand flying to her mouth. Michael's jaw dropped, his eyes wide with disbelief, then narrowed with intense calculation. The sum total of this hidden wealth was far beyond anything they had ever imagined, dwarfing the value of my current home. I allowed a moment for the enormity of their discovery to sink in. Then with a sigh, I offered the final crucial piece of the puzzle. "It's all rather complicated," I murmured. "But Beatrice's son, Thomas, he's a wonderful financial advisor. He helped Aunt Clara with all her affairs, and he's been managing these new investments for me. He knows everything. You should definitely meet with him soon to discuss my future care and how these assets can best be managed. The mention of a financial advisor, someone outside their direct control, seemed to snap them out of their stunned silence. They exchanged a quick, meaningful glance, a silent agreement passing between them. The real prize was no longer just my house. It was this newly revealed, vast fortune. Phase 1 of my plan was complete. The bait was not only taken, it was swallowed hook, line, and sinker. The tension has been building, and now it's time for the confrontation. You don't want to miss how Eleanor finally reveals everything. Keep watching to see the shocking reactions, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to hear the rest of her story. The moment Michael and Victoria left, brimming with avarice and the promise of untold riches, I made the call to Beatrice. They took the bait, I confirmed, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over me. Hook, line, and sinker. Excellent, Eleanor. Beatrice's voice was sharp with approval. Thomas is ready. We'll set the meeting for next Tuesday. Your place. It's time to spring the trap. Over the next few days, I orchestrated the final elements of my plan. I made a crucial call to a retired judge, Judge Davies, an acquaintance of Beatrice's, who agreed to attend the meeting as an impartial witness to the proceedings. His presence would lend an undeniable gravity to the situation. I also invited my own physician, Dr. Hayes, the geriatric specialist who had conducted my cognitive assessment, ensuring his professional testimony would be undeniable. And of course, Sarah, whose loyalty and moral compass I trusted implicitly, would be there. Her presence was both for support and as another witness to their machinations. A practical yet deeply symbolic step I took was calling a locksmith. I need all the locks in my house changed, I instructed, immediately. This was not just for security, but to preempt any desperate attempts by Michael and Victoria to search for the fictional assets once they believed I was safely out of the picture. No more easy access, no more private snooping. My home, once a symbol of their inheritance, was now fortified. The day of the confrontation arrived, clear and cold, but within my house the atmosphere was electric. I sat in my living room, the space arranged meticulously, a calm eye in the center of the storm. Michael and Victoria arrived promptly, dressed formally, as if for a business meeting, their expressions a peculiar mix of forced concern and barely contained eagerness. Their eyes darted around the room, clearly searching for Thomas, the supposed guardian of my new wealth. Mother Eleanor, Victoria began, her voice overly sweet, clutching a handful of glossy brochures. We've been doing so much research into your future care. Look, Golden Sunset has an opening. We even put down a deposit just in case. She beamed, presenting the brochures as if she had won a prize. The audacity was breathtaking. Yes, and Dr. Wallace, a wonderful specialist we consulted, Michael added, clearly fabricating a new character, advised a swift transition, said it's best for peace of mind. I nodded slowly, playing my role to perfection. Oh, that's thoughtful of you both. I paused, then tilted my head innocently. About that Florida property, though, and the investments, you'd be willing to manage all of that, wouldn't you, dear? It's all so much for me. Their eyes lit up like Christmas trees, reflecting the dollar signs dancing in their heads. Of course, Mother, Victoria gushed, practically salivating. We would be honored to help you with everything, absolutely everything. Just then the doorbell chimed, a precise, melodious sound cutting through the thick tension. I rose, a serene smile on my face. Ah, our other guests are here. The door opened, and into the living room stepped Dr. Hayes, Judge Davies, and Sarah, their faces grave and expectant. Michael and Victoria exchanged confused glances, their smiles faltering. Before they could fully process the unexpected arrivals, the doorbell chimed again, and Thomas, Beatrice's son, a sharp-suited financial advisor with an impeccably serious demeanor, entered, followed by Beatrice herself, her eyes twinkling with suppressed amusement and iron resolve. The room, usually filled with laughter and holiday cheer, was now a courtroom. I faced Michael and Victoria, my voice clear and steady, devoid of any feigned fragility. I'd like to clarify a few things today. I turned to Dr. Hayes. Doctor, would you be so kind as to share the results of my recent cognitive assessment with everyone present? Dr. Hayes stepped forward, his expression professional. Certainly, Eleanor. As per my thorough examination and battery of cognitive tests, Miss Eleanor Vance is in excellent cognitive health. There is no impairment whatsoever to her memory, reasoning, or decision-making capabilities. She is perfectly competent to manage her own affairs. A collective gasp escaped Michael and Victoria, their faces drained of color, confusion giving way to a dawning dread. I turned back to them, my gaze unwavering. So, Michael, Victoria, let's talk about my forgetfulness, the stove incident, and my falls. The faulty burner I repaired myself, the loose rug thread I secured, the wet floor Daniel created, which you, Michael, cleaned up. Not the signs of a woman in decline, but rather a woman perfectly capable of managing her own home and life. My voice grew colder, cutting through their attempts to interrupt. And Victoria, I heard you and Isabel at Christmas. Vamos mandarela promiso. We need to send that old hag to a nursing home so you can take her house. You spoke in Portuguese, but I understood every word. Beatrice stepped forward, her voice authoritative. Eleanor has documented all of your manipulative behaviors, recorded your conversations, and has numerous witnesses to your attempts to exploit her. She also has legal counsel present, as well as a retired judge. She gestured to Judge Davies, who nodded solemnly. Elder abuse and financial exploitation carry severe legal consequences. Thomas then took center stage, his voice calm and precise as he laid out the new estate planning. In light of Mrs. Vance's excellent health and her concerns regarding these attempts at coercion, her house has been placed in an irrevocable trust, ensuring her lifelong residency and future control. Furthermore, new medical and financial powers of attorney have been executed, naming individuals outside of this immediate family. The full weight of their folly crashed down on Michael and Victoria. They looked utterly shell-shocked. And finally, I said, my voice rising slightly, the Florida condo, the secret investments, Aunt Clara's inheritance, all of it was a fabrication, a carefully constructed lie. Bait, Michael and Victoria, bait to expose your true intentions. And you took it, hook, line, and sinker. Sarah, who had been listening with growing horror, finally spoke, her voice thick with disgust. I can't believe you two planning to sell Eleanor's furniture? Her cherished belongings? Michael's composure shattered. He began to weep, his face a mask of shame and remorse. Mother, I'm so sorry. We didn't mean to. It was just... Enough, Michael, I interrupted, my voice firm. Your apologies are too little, too late. The trust is broken beyond repair. This house, my assets, my life will no longer be dictated by your greed. You will have no access to me, my home, or my finances. This is the consequence of your actions. The meeting ended abruptly. Michael, his face streaked with tears, his shoulders slumped in genuine shame, stood up and quietly walked out. Victoria, however, remained, her face a contorted mask of fury and humiliation. She shot me a look of pure hatred, a venomous glare that promised future retribution. But for now, the trap had been sprung, and they were caught. 6 months after the dramatic confrontation in my living room, a profound silence settled over my life, a stark contrast to the earlier storm. Michael and Victoria maintained a stunned distance, no calls, no visits, no attempts to communicate. The absence of their presence, once a source of comfort, now felt like a quiet victory. While their immediate silence was a relief, it still left an ache for my grandchildren, Daniel and Lily. It was Sarah, my steadfast sister-in-law, who stepped into the breach, bridging the gap with gentle diplomacy. She ensured regular visits from my beloved grandchildren, filling my days with their innocent laughter and boundless energy. Through Sarah, I also received subtle confirmations of Michael's deepening regret, a hint of genuine remorse that offered a flicker of hope. In this newfound quiet, I embraced my reclaimed life. My book club became a vibrant intellectual haven, its members intelligent and engaging, fostering stimulating conversations that invigorated my mind. My water aerobics classes weren't just about physical exercise. They were a community, a place where I felt strong and connected. I started to redecorate my home, purging it of ghosts of old expectations and infusing it with colors and textures that truly reflected my spirit. I even rediscovered my passion for painting, setting up an easel in my sunroom, allowing vibrant colors to bloom on canvas, a reflection of the vivid life I was now living. Beatrice, ever perceptive, noticed the transformation during one of our weekly coffee dates. "Eleanor," she remarked, her eyes twinkling, "you're absolutely glowing. It seems freedom looks rather good on you." And she was right. I felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of their expectations and my own past complacency. 3 months after the confrontation, a handwritten letter arrived in my mailbox. The elegant script, unmistakably Michael's. My heart fluttered as I opened it. It was a heartfelt apology, acknowledging his profound wrongdoing, expressing deep shame, and most importantly, requesting an opportunity to talk. The letter was devoid of excuses, simply a raw confession of his mistakes and a plea for reconciliation. I didn't respond immediately. I waited another month, processing the letter, consulting with Beatrice, and even discussing it with my new therapist, whom I'd started seeing to help me navigate the emotional fallout of the betrayal. It was important not to rush, not to give in to old patterns. Finally, I agreed to meet Michael not at my home, but at a neutral coffee shop, a public place that symbolized the new boundaries I was establishing. The meeting was awkward at first, filled with silences and tentative words. Michael looked older, his face etched with genuine sorrow. He confessed everything, his crippling financial struggles, Victoria's relentless manipulations, and how her greed had warped his judgment, and finally the news of their separation. Victoria had left him, taking Daniel and Lily, unwilling to endure the financial fallout and the public shame. He was living alone, struggling to find his footing, and desperately missing his children. As he spoke, layers of hurt and misunderstanding began to peel away. My initial anger softened, replaced by a deep compassion for the son I had lost, and who was now slowly, painfully, finding his way back. We talked for hours, revisiting old wounds, acknowledging unspoken grievances, and confronting the bitter truth of his actions. Towards the end, Michael looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Mom, I know I don't deserve it, but I want to earn back your trust. I want to be your son again, the son you deserve." I met his gaze, my own eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and a cautious hope. "It will take time, Michael," I said honestly. "Trust once broken is not easily mended. But we have that now, don't we? Time." Our relationship began a slow, deliberate reconstruction. Sunday dinners at my house became a new ritual, but this time it was different. We established new boundaries, built on respect and brutal honesty. We went on outings, shared quiet conversations, and slowly, painstakingly rebuilt the fragile bridge between us. I fiercely maintained my independence, accepting his help only when I truly needed it, and always on my terms. 6 months after that initial coffee shop meeting, my home was filled with laughter once more, not the strained, artificial laughter of old, but genuine joy. I hosted a dinner party. My reconstructed family gathered around the beautifully set table. Michael was there, solo, quieter, more introspective, but present. Sarah and her husband, David, brought their warmth and unwavering support. My grandchildren, Daniel and Lily, now had unfettered access to their grandmother, their bright smiles a testament to the mending of our fractured world. Beatrice and Thomas, my champions, sat at the table, their presence a quiet affirmation of the justice served. And among them were some of my new friends from the book club and water aerobics, individuals who knew me as Eleanor, the vibrant, resilient woman, not the old hag they had tried to diminish. As I looked around my home, now a sanctuary filled with love and respect, I reflected on the journey. This wasn't just a house. It was a testament to my worth, my dignity, and my unyielding spirit. It was shared with those who truly valued me, not for what I possessed, but for who I was. Later, as the guests were leaving, Michael lingered. "Mom," he asked softly, "will you ever fully trust me again?" I smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. "I trust the person you are becoming, Michael, The person who is learning from his mistakes, who is willing to do the hard work. That's enough for now. After everyone had left, I walked through my quiet home, the lingering scent of good food and companionship filling the air. I realized that in fighting for my home, I had truly fought for myself. I had discovered a forgotten strength, built new connections, and learned the invaluable lesson of standing up for myself, even against those I loved. I paused by a mirror looking at my reflection. I saw not decline, not the old hag they had tried to define, but a woman of wisdom, dignity, and profound resilience. I made a silent promise to myself, a vow whispered to the reflection looking back at me. I will never again allow anyone to make me believe I am less than I am. My true inheritance was not just the physical house or the financial security I had painstakingly protected. It was the reclamation of myself, whole, worthy, and finally genuinely free.